Springfield Diocesan Cemeteries now offer above-ground entombment at 2 locations in Springfield, St. Michael's and Gate of Heaven cemeteries. Both Catholic mausoleums are open daily from 8:30 to 3:30. For more information or an appointment with our Family Counseling Office, call 413-733-6019. That's 413-733-6019.
Coming up on this edition of Reel to Reel.
I'm Steve Kiltonick here at St. Michael's Cathedral, where Catholics, Lutherans, and members of the interfaith community have gathered to commemorate the 500th anniversary of the Reformation.
Rebecca Drake tells us what's inside the pages of the current issue of the Catholic Mirror. And Lourdes, our last stop on our July Catholic Communications pilgrimage. These stories and more are just ahead on this edition of Reel to Reel. Hello and welcome to Reel from Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Springfield as we mark the month of November, dedicated to all our beloved who have gone before us. We are here outside the Most Holy Redeemer Mausoleum, which was completed nearly a decade ago, an inspiring structure with its white steeple reaching into the skies and stained glass window reminding all of faith in the resurrection. We begin our program today looking back some 500 years. On October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation, a religious, political, and intellectual upheaval that split 16th century Catholic Europe. This past weekend, Catholics and Lutherans united with other faith groups at St. Michael's Cathedral to commemorate the 500th anniversary. Steve Kiltonick sat down with Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky to talk about the Reformation and its impact on Catholicism.
In 1517, Pope Leo X announced that indulgences would be sold to help fund the building of St. Peter's Basilica. Indulgences are the partial remission of the temporal punishment due for sins after absolution. Martin Luther, who was a Catholic Augustinian monk and university professor, was vehemently opposed to the Pope selling indulgences. Luther composed a document, the 95 Theses, and on October 31st, 1517, he nailed a sheet of paper with the theses on the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church in Germany. His act was the spark that ignited the beginning of the Protestant Reformation in Europe. By the time it was over, Lutheranism was the state of religion throughout much of Germany, Scandinavia, and the Baltics. As chair of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs, Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky has spent the past 3 years preparing Catholics for the 500th commemoration of the Reformation, which took place this past Tuesday. Locally, the commemoration took place on October 29th at St. Michael's Cathedral with a joint Lutheran Catholic prayer service, which was also open to members of the interfaith community. Bishop Rosansky and Pastor Lauren Holm of the Bethesda Lutheran Church in Springfield led the gathering. In speaking about the Reformation's history, Bishop Rosansky said that Martin Luther's 95 Theses was unfairly portrayed as an act of defiance.
What Martin Luther was really doing was the normal course of events on how to have a debate to speak about theological issues. So Martin Luther really had a deep problem with the selling of indulgences.
Bishop Rosansky said because of a series of miscommunications and misunderstandings, the call for a debate became a much larger issue.
It became a point of Luther questioning papal authority and the church, and it led eventually to the Diet of Worms, where Martin Luther was excommunicated.
Luther used the power of a new invention, the printing press, to spread his pamphlets to the wider population. Thousands of copies of his 95 Theses were distributed in Germany alone. The Council of Trent met for a number of years after Luther's excommunication and attempted to answer the problems that triggered the Reformation.
The Council of Trent did many good things. It solidified the canon of sacred scripture. It clarified the 7 sacraments. It talked about the papal authority. It covered many, many issues.
During the time of the Counter-Reformation, the Catholic Church grew more spiritual, more literate, and more educated. However, over the next 4 centuries, the huge rift between Lutherans and Catholics continued to grow.
The misunderstandings and the divisions just deepened and deepened and widened until many who are older Catholics today remember that we could not set foot in a Protestant church. There was no interaction, no interface between us.
But things began to change in 1962 when Pope John XXIII opened Vatican II.
It really started building the bridges back between the Christian churches, particularly the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church, where the Reformation had all started. After Vatican II, then we began to have our ecumenical dialogues, more cooperation, more understanding.
In 2015, the groundbreaking book, Declaration on the Way, was released. It was approved by the Lutheran Council and the Bishops' Council on Ecumenical and Religious Affairs. It describes the 32 points that Lutherans and Catholics agree on and is a synopsis of the theological discussions that have taken place between the two faiths over the past 50 years.
But we also said, looking into the future, there are some points of divergence that need to be addressed. So, and that's why it's called Declaration on the Way, acknowledging that we're not there yet at full communion, but that we are working together on communion.
Bishop Rosansky said a companion book, From Conflict to Communion, helps parishes work in an ecumenical way to talk about the chasm between the Lutheran and Catholic faiths. Last October in Sweden, Pope Francis and the president of the Lutheran World Federation signed a joint declaration accepting a common path, stating that what unites the two faiths is greater than what divides them. In preparation for the commemoration, the Newman Catholic Center at UMass held a series of discussions over the past 2 months. On October 3rd, Bishop Rosansky and the Reverend Dr. Karl Donfried, pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church, spoke on the past, present, and future of the Lutheran Catholic dialogue. At the commemoration prayer service at St. Michael's, various petitions were read by members of the interfaith community. Representing the Unitarian Universalist congregation was the Reverend Jason Seymour. Nina Dini spoke on behalf of the Baha'i faith. Dr. Mohammed Bajwa represented the Islamic Society of Western Mass. And the Reverend Ryushin Nick Karapasis spoke for the Buddhist faith. In a show of unity, everyone teamed up for a shared hand blessing and prayer. Pastor Holm discussed why the prayer service was open to the wider faith community.
The problems that we face in society today are huge, and all the different faith traditions care about the same things. We care about violence and peace and hunger and poverty, about treating all people with dignity and respect, welcoming all people. So since we're all focused on the same issues, we thought it just made so much sense to come together as an interfaith community where we could pray together about these same issues and then roll up our sleeves and get to work.
After the prayer service, all participants were invited back to the Bishop Marshall Center to prepare food for the homeless. Why did you decide to choose hunger as sort of the topic?
Well, it's probably one of the easiest to target, and it's also one of the largest problems.
At the various workstations, groups worked in assembly line fashion to put together the mac and cheese food packages, pouring and measuring the pasta before packaging and sealing each of the plastic bags, which were then taped and put in boxes for shipment. Prior to the event, money was collected from the various faith groups for the Outreach Program, a company based in Iowa which runs events like this in 20 states to help feed people in need. Matthew Martin, a former Lutheran pastor from Quincy, is the regional manager of the program. Martin said St. Michael's was the 5th activity he was involved in over the past weekend.
Every event that we do is significant because all the meals stay locally, or this group has decided to send some down to Florida and try to get them into Puerto Rico to help hurricane relief.
On this Sunday, $4,000 was raised prior to the event, which will be enough to fund 16,000 meals.
I think the event helps us to reflect on the pain that division brings, particularly in our Christianity and our Christian faith, but also of the positive things that have happened.
Bishop Rosansky is optimistic that in the ongoing Catholic-Lutheran discussions, as well as the interfaith and ecumenical dialogues, people can agree to disagree.
In our country today and in our world where disagreement is just so poisonous and so venomous, we have to give that example as Christians, what it is to be able to talk about our differences respectfully and civilly.
For Reel to Reel, I'm Steve Kilconick.
And a joint prayer service was also held on October 29th at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Amherst. Father Gary Daly, director of the Catholic Newman Center at UMass, and the Reverend Stephen Wilco, pastor of Emmanuel Lutheran, led the gathering to commemorate the anniversary. And you can read more on the Reformation in the current edition of the Catholic Mirror. And still to come on Reel to Reel, we'll learn more on an upcoming conference designed to help revitalize parishes.
And Lourdes, our last stop on our July Catholic Communications pilgrimage.
These stories and more are still to come on Reel to Reel.
The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passionist Brother Terrence Scanlon, your Chalice host, inviting you to take time out of your busy days and join us Sunday morning at 10. We welcome Bishop Mitchell Rosansky as our celebrant and begin our annual Novena of Remembrance from the Gate of Heaven Cemetery. The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection, Sunday morning at 10, right here on 22 News.
The annual Catholic Appeal, One Family, Many Gifts.
I'm seminarian Frank Furman, attending the Pontifical North American College in Rome. Thanks to support from donors to the annual Catholic Appeal, our diocesan seminarians receive the training needed to prepare for this important calling to serve God's people.
The annual Catholic Appeal, One Family, Many Gifts. Please give generously in your parish or visit diospringfield.org.
Well, everyone wants to belong to a fabulous parish where there's a lot going on, parishioners are active, and you can just feel the energy. In a move to address ways to bring parishes to life, so to speak, the Diocese of Springfield will be the location of a special conference coming up in February. Here to tell us more about it is Gina Cherwinski, Director of Catechetics and Youth Formation for the Diocese. Hi, Gina, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Sharon, thanks for having me.
So it sounds like we have the beginnings of a new evangelization plan here with this conference coming up in a few months.
Yes, the Northeast Parish Revitalization Plan is being sponsored by Alpha New England and Divine Renovation, and they have chosen the site here in Springfield as a central location for all the New England dioceses and those in New York to join into this parish revitalization process.
Now, what's the goal of this conference?
The goal of the conference is pretty simple. It's to implement the joy of the gospel that Pope Francis wrote, Evangelium Gaudium. So we're trying to bring that to life today and see how our parishes can thrive if we're truly living the Pope's message.
And I understand if people want to attend, there will be an informational meeting to learn more about it.
Yes, on Monday, November 13th, there's going to be 2 opportunities to learn more about the Northeast Parish Revitalization Conference. First, there'll be a meeting at the Bishop Marshall Center from 1 to 2:30 p.m. and then in the evening from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at St. Elizabeth's Parish in Ludlow.
All right, Gina Cherwinski, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And if you would like more information about the Northeast Revitalization Conference, we have a link at iobserve.org.
Several years ago, I was driving to work through some back roads when I noticed a flock of sheep in a field where I had never seen sheep before. The spiritual symbolism inspired images of Jesus as both shepherd and lamb and became a living prayer as I began my workday. I recalled this experience as I reviewed the stories in the November-December issue of the Catholic Mirror. in which we invite readers to reflect on ways to become ministers of reconciliation in a world where faith seems out of fashion. In the cover story, you will meet some local Catholic scouts, along with their parents and adult leaders, who find strength and hope by keeping God in their lives and relationships. In a guest commentary reprinted from the Catholic transcript of the Hartford Archdiocese, a young lawyer, husband, and father shares his commitment to being an example for his peers who have strayed from the Catholic faith. In local news, the Springfield Diocese introduces a new online child protection training program to bolster its efforts to safeguard children and youth in parish and diocesan programs and activities. And the Diocesan Diaconate Program also has announced a new pre-formation program, which will help men considering a vocation to the Church's permanent diaconate. In advance of the annual collection for the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, we highlight a Springfield agency that recently received a CCHD grant and the worker-owned cooperative businesses that help low-income families find a way out of poverty. Our parish angel, Turners Falls parishioner Amy Connolly, is unfailing in her determination to pass her Catholic faith on to her children and grandchildren. And Bishop Rosansky, who chairs a national committee for ecumenical and interfaith relations, encourages people of all faiths to provide examples of civility, hope, and healing in a world fractured by animosity and fear. As for that field of sheep, they disappeared after a few days, but left me wondering if I have overlooked other sheep in my daily travels, and how I might become a better shepherdess for those I meet who may not be lost, but only waiting to be found. At the editor's desk, I'm Rebecca Drake.
Back in July, Catholic Communications sponsored a 12-day pilgrimage to Portugal, Spain, and France. More than 50 pilgrims got to see the magnificent cities, towns, and landscapes full of many spiritual inspirations. From Lisbon to Fatima, Santiago de Compostela to Burgos and Loyola, the pilgrims ended up at the final stop in their journey, Lourdes. Join us now as we tag along with Father Gary Daly and Bishop Mitchell Rosansky to this spot where the Marian apparitions appeared to a young peasant girl, Bernadette Subaru, over 150 years ago.
We are on pilgrimage. Join us as we visit the sacred sites and the beautiful vistas and landscapes of Portugal, Spain, and France. Our journey will take us through Lisbon and up the Iberian Peninsula to Fatima, where we will join in the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the apparitions. Traveling north, up the coast to Santiago de Compostela to experience the sights and the sounds surrounding the Feast of St. James. We make our way across the top of Spain to Burgos and Loyola as we make our final stop at Lourdes. Travel with Bishop Rosansky and participate in the many graceful events of this magnificent pilgrimage. Today we continue our drive from Burgos and Loyola through the beautiful Pyrenees mountain range on our way to the southwestern part of France. With beautiful memories of our time in Fatima, our attention turns now toward another apparition that happened here in this beautiful town of Lourdes. Lourdes is a small town of about 15,000 people and is able to accommodate nearly 5 million visitors a year. Next to Paris, Lourdes has the largest amount of hotels in France, about 270. Nestled in the Pyrenees Mountains, Lourdes is approximately 1,400 feet above sea level with a beautiful river called the Gave du Pou running through the heart of the town. On February 11, 1858, a 14-year-old girl named Bernadette Subaru witnessed the first of 18 visions of our Blessed Virgin Mary at a grotto near Lourdes, France. The first apparition appeared when Bernadette was gathering wood with her sister and a friend. Bernadette heard a noise like a gust of wind and looked up toward the grotto. She saw a lady dressed in white. She wore a blue belt and a yellow rose on each foot. Upon seeing the lady, Bernadette began praying the rosary. When the prayer ended, the lady suddenly vanished. On a subsequent visit to the grotto, Bernadette asked the lady to write down her name, and the lady replied, "It is not necessary," and then added, "I do not promise to make you happy in this world, but in the next. Would you be kind enough to come here for a fortnight?" In the weeks that followed, there were several more apparitions of the lady at the grotto. On one occasion, the lady gave Bernadette the following message: "Penance, penance, penance. Pray to God for sinners. Kiss the ground as an act of penance for sinners." On another visit to the grotto with a large crowd present, the apparition instructed Bernadette to drink and bathe from a previously unknown spring that flowed under the rock. While scratching the ground, Bernadette found that it was moist and that a little pool of muddy water was forming. She cupped her hands together and was able to drink the water and wash her face. The waters that flow from this holy spring have subsequently been known to have miraculous healing powers. It was not until the 16th apparition that the lady identified herself. The lady lifted up her eyes to heaven, joined her hands as though in prayer, and said, "I am the Immaculate Conception." Bernadette's final vision occurred on July 16, 1858. As Our Lady requested, a church was built on this site of the grotto where Our Lady appeared. Work began on the 14th of October, 1862, and the basilica was dedicated to the Immaculate Conception and consecrated in 1876. The crypt under the main church was blessed in 1866 in the presence of Bernadette Soubirous. It would be the last thing that she saw before she entered the convent of the Sisters of Charity in Nevers, France. We visit the beautiful grounds of the shrine. Many people make the grueling walk up a steep hill praying the Stations of the Cross. Others visit the many chapels and candle shrines. Some experience the waters of Lourdes, both bathing in the baths as well as drinking the water from the spring. And many fill their bottles to bring water home to loved ones. What the rosary is to Fatima, water is to Lourdes. And this is what people come for, the healing waters. With the large numbers of infirmed coming to the celebrations throughout the year, it was decided a much larger church needed to be built to accommodate the multitudes. It was consecrated the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary on March 25, 1958, the Feast of the Annunciation, by then Cardinal Roncalli, soon to be Pope John the 23rd. This basilica is said to be the largest underground basilica in the world. It has the surface area larger than 2 football fields, which holds 25,000 people with seating for 5,000. We witness today the Eucharistic procession that concludes in this underground basilica. The piazza outside the basilica overlooks the entire shrine. The Rosary Esplanade, with a surface area of around 2.5 acres, is surrounded by 2 great ramps. These are like a mother's arms gathering her children to press them close to her heart. It is here that the daily evening procession ends. What is amazing and what has really touched our pilgrims is the number of infirm that are here, coming in on stretchers, coming in on wheelchairs, hundreds and hundreds.
The procession we had last night was overwhelming. When you see the hundreds of followers that come here with their faith to believe that the Virgin Mother can help them in their infirmities, and all the work that goes in, all the helpers they have.
The number of people in wheelchairs and walkers and all the attendants who are here with them, who have dedicated at least a week of their life, who have, in the most part, paid their own way to come to be volunteers.
people that are looking for a smidgen of hope, just a little bit of grace in order to bear their infirmity and possibly even receive a healing, if not physical, at least a spiritual healing, so that they can embrace whatever cross that has been given to them. With all the beauty of Lourdes, its basilica and crypt, the stations of the cross and the candle shrines, the most special and memorable place in Lourdes has to be the grotto. This is indeed a holy place, the place where once again heaven met earth. It was here at this sacred place that Our Lady visited Bernadette, and the water flowed from the ground in an abundant spring that millions come to drink and bathe in. It is at this grotto where we celebrate Mass with our bishop in the early hours of the morning in our final day.
As we gather here this morning, very conscious of the events that happened almost 160 years ago, as Bernadette Soubirous witnessed the apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary, we reflect in our own lives. How do we allow ourselves to be poor in the things of this world so that our hearts can be open to the richness of the message that God gives to us? If we fill our lives with the things of this world, then we don't have that openness to God. But if we allow ourselves to truly be poor in a humble way, we can open our hearts to that message of salvation that God brings to us. This is ultimately the message of Lourdes. The message that the words of the Blessed Virgin Mary said to Saint Bernadette: penance, penance, penance. Penance so that we can come to God with pure hearts, seeking the forgiveness of our sins. And that's the ultimate healing that God wills for each one of us.
How fitting it is that we end our pilgrimage in this holy place, where heaven indeed has met earth, where our Blessed Mother appeared to Saint Bernadette of Soubirous. Here at this grotto we celebrated Mass with Bishop and with our pilgrims. And we come on this final day, departing here with Lourdes, but departing with many memories and a spiritual uplift. And so we come at the conclusion of our pilgrimage here at Lourdes with hearts full of gratitude. And we praise God for this site, and we praise God for all the many sites that we have witnessed over these past 11 days. What a beautiful way to end our pilgrimage through Portugal, Spain, and France. We give thanks for the graces received and the many that will come as a result of others hearing and witnessing the beauty of this pilgrimage. May Our Lady of Fatima and Our Lady of Lourdes bless you abundantly.
What an amazing journey. We'd like to thank Father Gary and Chief Videographer Bill Picoscia for all the hard work that went into producing these pieces. And stay tuned in the coming weeks as we announce our 2018 pilgrimage. And for this week, that's Reel to Reel. Thanks for spending part of your evening with us. For updates anytime, you can find information and news on the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and around the world, on our news and information site, iobserve.org. And also be sure to friend us on Facebook, where you will be able to travel with our reporters as they work on stories for Reel to Reel and get the latest on the Catholic Church. Like us at Catholic Communications. I will be back at this same time next week for another edition of Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you.
Reel to Reel is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.
Springfield Diocesan Cemeteries now offer above-ground entombment at 2 locations in Springfield, St. Michael's and Gate of Heaven cemeteries. Both Catholic mausoleums are open daily from 8:30 to 3:30. For more information or an appointment with our Family Counseling Office, call 413-733-6019. That's 413-733-6019.